A coincidence is a term often given to amazing or miraculous events in our lives that have no real connection to each other. Two people meeting at a coffee shop that just happened to develop into true love would be a good example of this. It's an idea that's often avoided in movies and stories because it might be seen as the hand of the author, the idea being that the characters didn't earn their ability to save the day. So how exactly do you make a movie that's nothing but a row of coincidences brought together, and yet still make it appealing and enjoyable movie to watch? You add in great characters, some actual events that the characters have to work through, and a helping heaping of the Christmas spirit to give us the anime movie Tokyo Godfathers. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, I am your ever-friendly Pokeprof, and welcome back to Fascinating Fiction. We've got 2 helpings of videos this month, come hell or high water, and while we're going to be getting that Christmas Carol episode next time, this time around I was wanting to do something a bit different when it came to Christmas. And considering it's been a while since we've talked about anime, I wanted to do one that fit the season. And when it comes to Christmas, this is generally the film that most anime fans will point you towards to celebrate this time of year. Which is honestly interesting considering the fact that this movie never got a dub in its official release here in the States, which often limits most anime from being seen. Despite this, Tokyo Godfathers is actually a pretty well-known anime here in the States and other English-speaking countries. While part of this likely comes from its Christmas trappings and themes, I do also think that part of this comes from the fact that the film was helmed by the late Satoshi Kon, who most casual anime fans might know a bit better from the anime film Perfect Blue and the series Paranoia Agent, both well known for their rather mind-screwy elements. It's actually saying something to mention that the film that we're talking about today is one of his more down-to-earth works. Also, something to note a little bit after the fact, but it wasn't until after I had finished this script that I discovered that this is also the 20th anniversary for the movie, which y'all know I'm all about celebrating different films and series' birthdays, but this one was completely unintended. Before we get into the film proper though, there's something of a point I'm wanting to make. One of our main characters we're going to be following in this movie is a trans woman, claiming in the first few minutes how she was born with the wrong parts. The reason I bring this up is mostly because how she's treated throughout the film, often being used for comedy, as well as having the occasional slur tossed at her from one of the other characters, and it's something that I think some might find a little uncomfortable. I will say that part of this comes from the film's setting, this being early 2000s Japan, and the characters themselves having very particular backgrounds, but I felt like I needed to bring this up to anyone who might be interested in watching the film itself. As it is, I feel like the character is still treated better here than I've seen in even a lot of more modern American media. If you feel like for whatever reason that the subtitles might be a little too much for you, there was an American dub for the film that came out in 2020 that does a remarkable job in sanding some of its rougher edges while retaining a lot of the things of the film we're going to be talking about today. Getting into the movie itself, Tokyo Godfathers finds us following 3 homeless people on Christmas Eve. Jin, an older man who's often in various stages of being drunk, Hana, the theatrical trans woman I was talking about before, and Miyuki, a teenage runaway. Jin here is the roughest of the lot, having been on the streets the longest of the 3, and he'll often serve as the dissenting voice among the cast. It's only after a couple of minutes of establishing our 3 main leads that we get to the major story thread of the film and the driving force behind it. The fact that these 3 characters find a newborn baby that has been abandoned. Hana takes an immediate liking to the little baby girl, naming her Kyoko after the Japanese translation of Silent Night to mean pure child, and proceeds to take her back to their little cardboard home in an area where she and the others have been squatting. These next couple of scenes we focus on establishes that all 3 characters are good people deep down. Hana's obvious, wanting to take care of the baby even though at first she's wanting to keep them as her own. Jin and Miyuki, on the other hand, are a bit harder to see that with, thanks to our first introductions to them having one being rude and disruptive during a sermon, and the other just simply spitting on passersby. Despite this, we see goodness in both characters as Jin shows a softer side, being able to take care of Kyoko thanks to having taken care of his own child. Miyuki also appears to have a kinder element, giving food to some of the other homeless in payment for taking one of their books that teaches about babies. This is also where some of the dialogue informs the audience of some of the characters' feelings, such as Jin caring deeply for Miyuki and viewing her as a daughter despite how often the two fight on screen. While initially agreeing to bring the baby back to the police, Hana is unable to bring herself to do it, believing that it would ruin Christmas for Kyoko completely. The fact that she might be just bounced around between foster families for the rest of her life doesn't help matters. While it does take a little bit of convincing, eventually Jin and Miyuki decide to go along with Hana to search for the baby's original parents to find out why they abandoned her. I'll actually say from this point onward, Hana becomes the linchpin of the entire film. Not only is she the reason for why the entire adventure begins in the first place, but it's also thanks to her that the other characters change. Jin gets called out more than once during the film by Hana, and Miyuki herself grows closer thanks to several key moments where she shows just how much she cares for the other two. This is, of course, when the film isn't being driven by the coincidences that are happening all the time. Now, this is something that's actually really interesting to mention when it comes to Christmas movies. As I said in the intro, we usually like to avoid coincidence in media because it makes it feel like the characters aren't working or earning the victory that they get. Having the main character be the secret that was there to beat the bad guy all along can feel contrived and usually isn't all that satisfying. But that's kind of the special thing about Christmas. Because of that feeling of hope often given to this time of year, we're more willing to look at something that can be seen as a coincidence as a sign of a miracle or the magic of the season. Tokyo Godfathers takes this idea up to 11, often suggesting that the baby Kyoko is a gift from God and has our protagonist looking out for her. This is shown as they start having interactions with different characters that lead them on a wild ride throughout the city. This includes saving the life of a Yakuza leader, Miyuki spending time with the wife of a hitman who is there to try and kill said Yakuza after being kidnapped, Hana bonding with a taxicab driver while trying to find Miyuki, and Jin giving an older homeless man his final wishes to before he passes away. But it's along all these crazy coincidences that we start learning more about the backstories of all three of our main characters and why they're homeless in the first place, each with different levels of tragic and circumstance landing them to where they are right now. Jin is the first to tell us his story, but we learn that he's told us a lie at first, revealing the truth later on that he had gambling debts and was a heavy alcoholic. Hana had lost her husband and felt like that she couldn't return to the place she called home because of her reaction to a drunkard there. And Miyuki, fitting that of a young child, ran away after stabbing her father, having done so because she thought he had gotten rid of her cat. It makes the characters shine a bit more when we see them start to call and care for each other a bit more throughout the film, and even start seeing their true colors, such as Miyuki becoming more respectful of Hana, or Jin spending time with the old man so he wouldn't be alone at death. We still have the strong plotline that helps carry the coincidences of the film, as the characters are so focused on finding Kyoko's parents. It's later on, after we get the true reveal of Jin's backstory, do we actually get a solid lead on what happens with Kyoko, as the baby turns out to have been kidnapped the entire time. The woman that we've been led to believe was the baby's mom had actually kidnapped her after losing her own child in stillbirth, brought to this point by heartbreak. Jin's the only one who learns about this initially after Hana and Miyuki had left because of his own backstory being revealed. What follows is a chase sequence as our protagonists go after the kidnapper, which includes a full-on car sequence straight out of an action movie, something that the film itself even points out. It ends with Mayuki being on the roof of a building that they all crash into, trying to talk the woman away from jumping off said building as she's finally hit the low point of everything having gone wrong, where she just wants to end it all. It's only through the cast risking their lives and a magical moment from Kyoko herself that convinces her otherwise. All ending with the true parents of the baby wishing for Jin, Hana, and Miyuki to be her godfathers, despite Jin being the only guy of the group. Wouldn't be the first time the title of a movie wasn't entirely accurate. I think one of the things that makes this film work so well, despite it being a little disjointed at parts and having some moments that haven't aged particularly well, is the general themes. It shows the good in people, even the worst of us, and how we can change or try to make amends. Hana is constantly pushing to make everyone happy. Jim redeems himself by doing his best to take care of her and Miyuki when he can, and Mayuki has come to care about the others and the baby enough that she's willing to do what she can to help. Even a minor character in the film that knows the kidnapping mother gets a moment like this. We meet him after meeting the Yakuza boss, and he's shown to be a bit of an ass, not only being the guy that Jin owed money to, but also in general bad-mouthing the very woman our protagonists are looking for. And yet this very same guy is willing to take several bullets for his boss and soon-to-be father, showing that even someone who appears to be at their worst can have goodness in them. The themes of family are also thick in this film, talking about what it means to be a real family. Ideas like how parents never really forget their kids or kids their parents are introduced, but even then it's not shown to be something to be an absolute truth. Hana reconnects to her adoptive mother halfway throughout the film, and even Mayuki envisions herself being more of a family with the people she's come to know on the streets rather than her own flesh and blood. This is something that Kon, the movie's director, really wanted to point out as the idea of family being more than just something you're born into, while not ignoring the importance of having those real blood relations. Even if Jin, to use his own words, has become a homeless bum, his daughter still cares for him. Hana's mother says that there was never any reason for her not to come for help after her husband's death. Even Mayuki's father tries to reach out to her despite being stabbed. The bonds to their actual families is never broken, simply damaged from past actions and regrets that none of the characters are able to face to at that time. It takes the life of an infant too small to take care of herself for the three of them to move past that and the events of the film for them to rekindle these relationships. It's this and the fact that it's never too late for anyone to make amends that makes this a wonderful story, and one that I feel really does fit the Christmas season. One of the elements that's often forgotten about this time of year is that it's also the time of forgiveness on top of the time of togetherness. We end the year before us by wishing even those who have hurt us good health and a bright future in the hopes that things won't be as bad for the next year ahead, and maybe all that bad blood and pain can be washed away by a new start. And in the case of Tokyo Godfathers, even if they're still homeless after all this, they know that their future will be a little bit brighter after finding Kyoko. With all that said, I hope I've done a good job to entertain you, and I'll do my best to do so again in the future. Hopefully you'll follow along with my content by subscribing and doing all the other things that gives us YouTubers life. If you wish to support me a bit more, I do have a Patreon where you can get access to bonus content. But until next time, stay frosty.